Hello, and thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast. I appreciate you tuning in to this recording. I've been out kind of traveling around a bit through October, which has been cool. I've been liking a couple of the nice weathered weeks that we've had here, a little bit of an Indian summer thing going on. So I kind of like some of that stuff. A lot of other crazy stuff going on too, but it's been cool to get to kind of jump out into the outdoors a little bit during October. And I think September, October, and November are really maybe one of my favorite outdoors seasons. And it's probably kind of set up that way for a lot of people that have like a tradition of going out on hunting trips through October, or, going out on opening day or something like that. In Oregon, I think it's October 1st. Maybe in other states, it's in a part of September. So I think it's kind of been tuned and tied to the hunting season in the American cultural lore for probably 100 years or 80 years or so, as that's kind of been part of the American mythologies. But it's cool though. I like going out in the fall. It's really one of the best times to go camping. It's when you get to kind of take or make use of all the equipment and stuff that you've sort of procured over time. And that's when you kind of also get to use some of the skills and stuff you've been trying to scout out or train on to kind of see how they work and the application of them. In the summertime when it's like really nice out, it's cool to go out and camp. And I've always had a really great time doing that. But like the hot weather camping, I don't know. It demands a little less. I guess that's kind of obvious, but the environment is sort of something that you don't have to contend with as much. And in the deep winter, the environment's probably too much to contend with. So there's a cool kind of pocket that I like as like an ideal, but a cool kind of weather pocket or environmental pocket between, I guess, like parts of the fall until November when it kind of gets too deep into it, and then parts of the spring as we're coming up into the summertime, where you can kind of feel like you're getting to do a little bit more. Fires, still kind of a no, right? But I'll wait for the winter or springtime to do that. But at least like in late fall, like in November, or in these like northern Oregon areas, after you start getting like a layer of snow or a significant amount of rain, and the fire, the emergency level drops back down to green. There's a lot of open burning that you can do on campsites that you set up at public land and stuff. So I think that's always kind of a fun part of like the winter or like late fall camping stuff, is when you get to set up like a bigger fire, gather some wood, gather some big logs to be kind of like your fuel for the evening. It's kind of fun. And it's sort of like that more, I don't know, primal kind of connective to like the real kind of root camping stuff. But as it goes for a lot of the year, like in the summertime, like hot weather stuff, you kind of like doing it around water, or that's how like we would do stuff. We would do rafting or something. So it's kind of like enjoying the day. You don't have to layer up. You don't have to wear like a dry suit or a bunch of different, I don't know, warming layers that you have to kind of be conscious of. So I think that's kind of where you start getting into more of that now. I think like now, like river trips and stuff, they sort of shift from like the recreational summer tourism whitewater stuff that you get between, I guess, like May and Labor Day. And now as you get kind of further into September and now deep into October, you have people, I guess, coming down just kind of strictly for some of the fishing season stuff. So you get like, instead of rafts, you'll have a bunch of drift boats come down, like fishing boats and stuff, guided tours and stuff for some of the lower river stuff, or just people out on there. They're kind of set up and prepped for fishing trips. But it's cool. Yeah, a lot of enthusiasm around some of the fishing stuff during this time of year. In fact, really, I want to get out and do some fishing stuff. I got my fishing license earlier this year, and I've gone a couple times this fall, but I need to really, I guess, commit a little more and kind of set it up the right way. I think I'm always kind of doing a couple too many things. Like I'm trying to like set a camera up to record footage, and then throw some casts and let the line set. And then you wait for an hour or so, but maybe if it's the non-optimal time or you're kind of up to something else, then you move on and stuff. So I haven't really caught a lot of stuff that was keeper worthy. I picked up a couple things out of the lake, and it was like, shoot, little tiny guy. Or a little like tiny sunfish or rafe. What is it? Yeah, I think it's a little sunfish, like these, like kind of like a bluegill. Not a lot, Shoot, a little better than a minnow. But yeah, I want to try and get into doing some more fall fishing stuff through now until like the end of the year. And I think there's a couple good seasons that kind of come on through November. But I think it'd be cool. I want to try and jump into that a little faster. I think there's also some kind of controlled like stocked ponds that are nearby where I'm at. I think they stock them with trout through the winter. And I'm interested in trying out a couple of those places. They seem like they're, or just kind of the numbers that they talk about. It's like, oh man, that's kind of cool for that kind of a thing, for a stocked fishing kind of thing. But I've been trying to get a little bit more into like what I can harvest, what I can prospect, what I can kind of gather from natural resource areas that are around me. And I think it's been kind of fun to do as, I guess, sort of a hobby. So along with like the photo stuff that I'm trying to do while I'm out, I've been trying to, like I was saying, like get a fishing license so I can do some fishing stuff on the side, or pick up a little bit of information about what kind of rock hounding I can do in that sort of area, or what kind of like foraging stuff I can do, or what kind of like wood gathering opportunities I have. So I've been trying to do some of that stuff a little bit more often. Like, and I don't know, email me if there's some other cool stuff I can do. But yeah, it's been cool. I've been trying to, like now in the fall, go out and do some chanterelle picking. So if I can find some spots that are good for it, it's like a lot of stuff like kind of near the coast or coastal range in Oregon, probably, I don't know, what like Florence to Astoria, probably a lot into Washington too, that I just have no clue about. But that, I think, look, those foothills of the mountains there kind of get the moisture, and they have the right type of like temperature range for them to grow during this time of year. It's interesting though how those grow patterns go. I really don't understand like mushrooms and how those mushroom rings work, or how their populations work. But yeah, it's really interesting how they grow in just like certain patches. Like where they are, there'll be more of those, but where they're not, there won't be. I don't know, it's just weird going around and finding them. But if you find one, you'll find like more around in that area if it's been like a good climate for it. For a while though, a lot of October still has been really just a little, we've gotten a little rain here and there, and I'm glad there's some like systems moving through, but it's really kind of been dry enough still that some of the forest floor isn't quite moist enough yet to really start bringing on the fungus growth that we need to get like a good crop of edible mushrooms out of it. So we'll kind of see how it goes, and I guess there's going to be a window of it. Sometimes like the years are better for it or worse for it, and I don't know. We'll kind of see how it goes for the rest of the year. Sometimes like as soon as you snap into November, you get a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks into November, and those will really be pretty good weeks. But as soon as you get a few days with sort of where you get like a strong frost or freeze overnight, that really messes with the growth of those mushrooms. And if you get them consecutively for like 3 days, that'll really knock out anything. For one of them, the mushrooms, they grow so fast. So if you have a hard freeze on Monday, but then it warms up Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, by Thursday you'll be able to get you wouldn't even notice. You'll be able to get a good crop of newly grown mushrooms out of that same area. So it just kind of depends on like how it goes. But as soon as you start getting like a set of hard freezes, man, it just seems like I've gone out and seen like a bunch of them that had been growing, and then now they're just like mushy, and they got a deep freeze, they frosted over, and now it's like a dead plant, and it's just kind of turned to a mush. And those mushrooms turn to a mush real fast. It's really weird. I was looking at a ring that's growing in our yard. It's just toadstools, like out by I don't know, just out by like an apple tree. It's cool that they come on, but they come on in like, I think kind of late September is when they start to pop up this ring out there. And then there's some other areas that I've noticed them around town too. It seems like it's just like a certain time of year, and boom, here's all these, as soon as the conditions get met right. But yeah, right where those are, they come up, and then they last about, I don't know, maybe 5 days, a week or so. Maybe it's been a week and a half now. But they really start to decay, and they start to like kind of fall over, fall apart. And it's interesting too to see how the grass responds. The grass and the lawn around it looks like it's been fertilized heavily, but yeah, it just boom, pops up, bright, dark green grass, about 3 inches, or maybe maybe twice as tall as the rest of the grass around it. So yeah, it seems like those little toadstool mushrooms fed the lawn pretty well. But yeah, I think there's like another growth of them coming on now, which is kind of interesting how they come on in a couple phases, but there's some fresh ones coming up in the ring area around it. And then those will kind of last for a couple of days and then wilt out over again too. But it's cool. Checking out some mushrooms and stuff around here. But yeah, I've been trying to go out and sort of see what I can forage around for, which has been kind of fun. I'm not really sure what other stuff there is. I hear there's, what is it, elderberry? I hear about that being looked for. And I remember, now this is another one. I remember seeing a person it was a strange circumstance. I was driving on a forest road out in the mountains here, pretty deep in the mountains, and didn't see any cars around. Didn't pass a car on the drive up. You see a car, then you're like, oh, well, there's probably a person around with that car. And then after we passed this, like, we didn't see a car either, but we were driving, and then there was a shorter man with a hat, and he had two big racks of these like branches, maybe about as long as like your elbow to your fingertip or so, but these long, like thin branches with these big broad green leaves on it. And it'd be, I don't know, maybe 24 inches or so. And they were all on these stacks. And then there'd be like a kind of a plywood thing, or I don't know what it was, maybe newspaper or something, paper, but then it was like more stacked on top of that, and then another layer and more stacked on top of that. But yeah, he just had this big bundle of these sticks with these big broad green leaves on it. And he was standing there on the edge of the road that we were at. And we drove by, and then we drove down the rest of this road. And yeah, we never saw a car or anything that he was staying in. But this guy was out here collecting these green sticks and leaves. So I'm not sure what that is. It looked like elderberry. I'd never really identified it exactly. I know some of that grows up here, and I know people try and forage for it. But I'm not really sure what for or how it works. But now that I know they do it, I want to do it too. Sort of how the chanterelle thing came on. I think like a lot of people had never really even heard of that. Or a lot of like the mushroom picking stuff, like morels. Morels got really popular and stuff. But I think it's like kind of because it kind of, people sort of found out that you can go look for it, and people are going looking for it. Or that it's like really expensive. You think like, wow, if it's $15 to look for it, or $15 to buy a pound of mushrooms, the chanterelle mushrooms in the store, well, if it's that expensive, it must be good. And if it's that good, then I must want to go look for it. Sort of what it seems like a little bit. But it's cool going out, looking for some mushrooms and stuff outside. I hear people talking about like picking morels, and I guess those must grow in a different environment, like a different terrain or whatever it is. I hear about them more like in the East or like the Midwest. So I'm not really sure, but I know like there's different relationships of like the tree to the type of soil and the type of like environment that it's in, all kind of plays a part into like what mushroom is going to grow. Is it a mycorrhizal relationship? I might have talked about it last time, but I don't really understand how that works. But I don't understand what allows there to be like a morel versus a good spot for a chanterelle to grow, or a portobello, or what are those regular white ones? Just those crimini? Just regular ones that we eat and stuff. So I'm not really sure what kind of like allows you to farm some but not farm others. I know that's a big one, that you can't effectively farm morel mushrooms. I guess you can harvest them in an area that is set up as an optimal environment. That's about as good as they've had it. Like they found like where they're growing and the time of year that they grow well, and they try and optimize for that, so they can go through and harvest more of it out of it. But they haven't been able to take, I suppose, like an area that didn't have the correct environment for it, and then sort of artificially grow more than the landscape would kind of bear naturally. I don't think they figured that out. And I don't really understand that, like how there's some that you can, or you kind of figure out a little bit, but like it's just like the complications between the relationships for some of them get so complex that it's like difficult to recreate. I guess there are biologists that work on that, of like how to get, or what is it? It's not a biologist. It's a type of biologist that studies mushrooms, right? A mycologist? Mycology? I think it's mycology and a mycologist for the study of mushrooms. But I also think there's like agriculture interests. I think there's like a food industry interest in trying to generate mushrooms of different varieties so that they're like a commercially available product. So I think they're trying to like work those things out. So sometimes it's mycologists at that level trying to study it and figure that out. But I think sometimes it's like, I don't know, whole different companies and groups and teams of people trying to sort of figure out ways to sort out those problems with growing and harvesting some mushrooms and stuff. I was hearing about this other thing too, where if you get a bunch of mushrooms and you're not quite sure what they are, there's I guess a few different ways, or there's a couple problems where it's difficult to identify certain types of mushrooms. There's some mushrooms that have, well, I'm not really sure how it goes. I really don't know anything about it. So I guess I should lead with that. There's a lot of them that are poisonous. I guess is sort of like the cautionary point of it. Like people talk about mushroom picking a lot, but really there's a lot of mushrooms that are pretty dangerous or that are just going to likely make you sick. So if you don't really have much expertise in it, it's kind of difficult to go out and do that easily, you know, because you're just going to gather some stuff that may look like it or may look almost exactly like it, but there's sort of some nuanced detail that makes it a different mushrooms or a different mushroom species that actually is one that's, you know, not good for you or at least not edible. There's I guess a difference between like the neurotoxic mushrooms that will, I think, kill you or get you really sick and like sick in like a neurotoxin way. But then I think there's like a number of them that are just inedible in a way where they'll I guess one from a range make you very sick to eat. Or they'll make you just kind of like mildly unhappy with what you ate. But generally, like I prefer not to eat a lot of that stuff. Or like if it seems like it's a bad or like an unknown, I'd rather like not eat just sort of an unknown mushroom. A lot of them, I guess, you can eat. Or there's a number of them that are like maybe not preferred, but are edible, but sort of may make you get an upset stomach. I was kind of confused about that. Of like, well, why would you eat it? I was like, oh, you can eat it. It'll make you sick, but yeah, you can eat it. And it's like, well, but isn't that why I wouldn't eat it? I mean, it's a thing I'm eating that makes me sick, right? Like, I can eat rotten milk too, right? It just makes you sick. Like, so I don't want it. I don't know, but I've heard of that as an explanation for some stuff. Also, I don't know. You hear weird explanations for eating natural things sometimes. So, but yeah, I was hearing about this thing where you can put a bunch of mushrooms that you've got down on like a screen and then put like paper on the backside of it. And then if you cover them and let them sit for a while, after they're cut, they'll end up throwing their spores. And I guess with certain mushrooms, you can visually like see the spore pattern that's dropped onto the sheet that you put on that screen. And I guess that's how they're able to identify some similar shaped mushrooms. Like if this mushroom looks this way and this other mushroom of a different species looks almost exactly the same way, a way that you can identify how they are different is by setting them on the screen and then getting a throw of their spores and then identifying the spore. Like, you know, one spore pattern will be like bluish or purplish or I don't know, whatever. And the other spore pattern will be like a yellow color or something. So you're like, oh, well, like this one like threw this kind of spore and this one didn't. So like now we can identify this as this specific mushroom. I thought that was weird though, like how to kind of figure that out. But fortunately, like that's what's cool about chanterelles is that they're really one of the easiest ones to identify, the golden chanterelles. There's one that like almost looks like it. That's a good thing to like pull up a YouTube video to identify visually how to distinctly tell the differences apart between them. It's sort of the way that the gills are fluted up the vein of the stem, and then as it kind of comes up to the mushroom top, how does that transition happen? With chanterelles, it's the gills are really shallow and they start real low on it and then kind of sweep up the fluting of the stem up to the mushroom top, and then with these imposter ones, I guess there's kind of like a hard angled joint there where you see the gill lines start and then the gills kind of come out from there with like a deeper sort of cut to the gill ridge with sort of some finer material, but those aren't good to eat. And I think those are a little bit more of a white color. There's white chanterelles too. I'm not really sure how that goes. The difference between like the white chanterelles or the golden chanterelles. I thought it was like sun exposure, like if they were kind of bleached out from being sort of hidden under moss or something. They always seem to be like a lighter kind of, well, yeah, just like a real light color. But then I thought the ones that were out in the sunshine had to sort of defend against that and like got like more of a color to them. But I guess they're kind of like a different set of mushroom types, sort of what I understand. But I've collected both of them in sort of the same areas, and if you find one, then it seems like you find both of them. So I'm not sure how that goes, but I've appreciated kind of collecting them, and it's cool to dry them. That's what I've been trying to do. Is it's hard to eat through all those mushrooms fresh as they are when you're harvesting them. I'm harvesting those mushrooms all at one time, and so what I'm trying to do this year, as opposed to what I've done in past years, where I just try and make up a dish with all of the mushrooms all that first time while they're fresh. It's fun to kind of go through the stuff you harvested and then like make a big pasta thing and like put a bunch of mushrooms in it, but this time it's just the ones that you harvested after you clean them. So that's really cool, and it's fun to put stuff like that together. But what I'm hoping to do is kind of gather up enough stuff from going out a little bit more frequently into a few different areas, and then gathering up the stuff that I've got, drying it out, and then having like dried mushrooms that are bagged and stored so that I can have them kind of through the rest of the year. I've also heard about like freezing mushrooms. Have you guys heard of that? I know, like, or like, when you thaw it out, like it's not really the same material anymore at all. So it's like you have to kind of put it into a sauce or something like that. So I was thinking like the cell damage that you get after freezing, it would just be like way too much to really use again. So I think what I'm going for is to like do to dehydrate the mushrooms so I can like cut them, or even maybe leave them intact, but like have those mushrooms dehydrated, which is there's a lot of water. If you like, especially like after it's been like really wet, like they just soak up that water in the forest floor, and then it's all within that cell mass of the chanterelle. But when you take a cut of a chanterelle that's like a kind of a thicker, hardier one, you take a cut of it and you put it on a frying pan that's hot, and you watch like the amount of water that it releases. But it's like, wow, that is just almost all rainwater that had come down and filled the cell walls, and now it's being released as you start to cook it. But you think, man, that's a lot. No way. So, I don't know. It's kind of cool. It's cool going through October, doing some of this stuff. I've also been trying to go out and do some rock hounding stuff. It's cool. I've just kind of been jetting over. I mean, this is like kind of the old and easy classic one, but I've been jetting over to the coast. Kind of keep an eye on the high tide and low tide times of the day and of the month. But it's cool to jet out there and check out what rocks are sort of washed up on the surface in the sand on the beaches in times of low tide. So it's kind of cool going out there, cruising the rock line and kind of just picking up some nice polished stones on the beach, which I've been kind of trying to do. Some jade stuff is kind of cool. You find like the little green ones, find some sand dollars and stuff, but you find like some cool rocks out there. I've been kind of having a good time trying to pull up some of those stones. A couple times we've got agate. A couple times it's like quartz. I think it's like a quartz rock. And then a lot of the time it's, I don't know, just some of their kind of cool, normal, basalt, normal rock stuff. Or it's got a line in it or something. That's kind of cool when you find one with like a textured feature of it, where it's there's some seam or something in there. I always like that kind of stuff too, where it's kind of a combination and stuff. But been going out to the beach and trying to find some rocks and stuff through October, and trying to kind of get out and do some more active stuff. I'll get into some of the camping trip stuff that I've done here in a little bit, but yeah, trying to go out to Eastern Oregon and check out some stuff and sort of poke around, and that's been cool. I like like I was saying, I like the October time period. It's kind of a cool outdoor month for stuff, and that's kind of what I was going to talk about too, is kind of layering up stuff for October. I've been trying to kind of build up the layers of clothes and the layers of like shelter stuff that I have for some of the outdoor travel stuff that I go out and do. And I do it on a budget, and I don't really have much stuff. And like other people have a lot more experience of like just getting to try all these different pieces and see like the benefits or the kind of weigh out the pluses and minuses of different pieces. And so I'm sure like it's probably the case that like the best gear is always the best gear, but it's kind of interesting to sort of go through those checklists, or, like kind of in your mind, like seeing like, well, like how's this work, or what's better for me for this thing or not. And so I've been pretty happy to always have, or for the last couple of years, to have like a Gortex rain shell layer. And for a lot of the outdoor stuff that I do in Oregon later into the year, that's been like a real lifesaver for having just like a hard waterproof shell that I can like really trust, that has like a good hood on it that can keep me dry for most of the day. That, along with and I guess kind of like working inward, like the Puffy jacket makes a huge difference. And so I use like a Puffy jacket all the time. There's a few different like sizes though, and you sort of have to like look at the down fill layer to see what's going to be best for you and like the climate that you're going out to. And it's kind of weird. It goes back and forth for me a little bit. So like out here in Oregon, where I am, like west of the Cascades, it's sort of a mild climate area a lot of the year. And so I'm able to, I think you're kind of dealing with like above freezing temperatures most hours and on most days through the year. I think like, there's some sections of the year where you get some heavy freezes, but outside of those storm times, it's really like pretty mild weather a lot of the time. And if I'm going camping or doing something outdoors in the winter, there's a couple different times I definitely use it. But really for a lot of like the 3-season work I do, I use a light Puffy jacket. I have like this North Face thermoball. I think it's like a polyester based one. It's not a down filled Puffy jacket, but I've used that for maybe 6 years now, and I really appreciate having that. I think it's been great. And that's probably one of my most used insulating layers when I'm going out, and I mean, it works great. Really, all 4 seasons with kind of paired in these mild weather circumstances, like I am here in Oregon, like that paired with that shell has been enough for me to go out in almost every kind of weather circumstance that I've been in when I've gone out and I've been working, or like when I was working outside a lot in the rain and trying to be outside like most days through the fall and winter. It was really fine to do that with a strong or like a good Gortex shell that keeps you dry all the way, and a puffy thermo insulating layer that keeps you warm. So it was pretty cool. But kind of comparing that, and I have like this Patagonia jacket that I think has like a heavier down fill rating, and that has a lot of insulation to it, which is cool. Warm jackets are great, and I definitely take that out kind of in deeper into the winter. But what I noticed though is that for a lot of circumstances, like I was saying, 3-season work, and while you're working or kind of like physically kind of exerting yourself, I've noticed like if it's not below freezing, that is too warm of a jacket to wear. And so you kind of get to pick a little bit of like where your environmental thresholds are, like what kind of environment are you spending a lot of time in? Is it going to be above freezing temperatures or below freezing temperatures? Or is it going to be hot weather temperatures, like where you're working, you know, your coldest temperatures might be 50, but you're really going up toward like the 80s and 90s pretty regularly. And that's kind of a different environment to work in too. So I've been kind of trying to keep an eye on that. But as we're kind of dropping into October, the outfitting stuff that I'm doing is sort of away from the heat gear stuff that I would have been using, where I'm in like lighter synthetic shorts and trying to use like lighter layers and stuff. Like in the winter, you kind of get to layer up and stuff, which is also kind of fun. Sweater weather, right? So what I picked up last year, and I'm kind of excited to put some more use into it, was a wool base layer. So I got a wool t-shirt, which is great. And I kind of appreciate trying to cut out some of the cotton material that I'm using when I'm going out and doing some more outdoor stuff. And I guess it's because apparently back in the day, cotton was a great revolution, right? You know, it was a more breathable fabric, and it would dry faster than other fabrics that they had available to them, I guess, is part of what was cool about it. But as I sort of understand now, it's one of the more riskier types of fabric that you can wear as a base layer when you're out in the woods for a couple of days, or when you're out camping, or, you know, they're talking TV shows about when you're in a survival situation. Not really that, but yeah, when you're out camping, or if you were going to go hunting, or if you're going to go on a couple-day photo trip in the woods and you're just going to be living out of your truck and stuff, it kind of is, it ends up being a little difficult to use a lot of cotton pieces, especially if you're going to get wet, or if it's cold and you don't want to get wet, but you do get wet. Man, that's a bummer, because the cotton stuff just kind of stays wet and it gets cold when it gets wet. And a couple of those things just sort of lead to it being a little bit frustrating. And I guess that's where some of the survival complications have happened with people who are out in okay conditions. They get hit with a cold rain or a wet snow, and they're in an outer, you know, they're in insulating layers, but they're like a cotton coating, or like, I guess like a tough, warm, insulated Carhartt jacket. Someone went hunting in that. They got into some wet snow on the second morning. The Carhartt wet pants the pants that were insulated got wet from the tall grass and brush that they walked through, and then the person became hypothermic because of their exposure to the cold that soaked through their pants that got them very cold. And I think they had to like ditch the pants, get into their sleeping bag that was synthetic, and then they try to like warm them up with a hot water bottle in a sleeping bag or something like that out of the jet boil. But really, like, it ended their trip. I think they can't continue out of that sort of stuff. So it's kind of interesting how like that kind of thing can go. And I don't know, people have probably heard anecdotes like that similarly in the past. I'd heard like someone else talking about like a warm weather thing where I think they were going out on like a 42-day canoe trip. Can you imagine that? Like going through some big river system in Labrador up in Canada. Wow. Fun times. Popping out in the Hudson Bay or something. Who knows? But they would go up there and they would talk about like all like the specific limitations on the type of fabrics that they would select to use. Because like if they got wet in the river, or I think it was like a cold weather, or who knows what kind of weather you're going to get, sort of circumstance where you go between hot and cold in Canada. kayaking or canoeing down 1,100 miles or something like that, just big, long trips like that. And they would kind of be really specific about how like they won't even have cotton boxers or cotton underwear because it'll be the thing that ends up being a problem. Other people or another person, I think kind of, there's a lot of great ways to sort of work through this next problem, but I think someone argued that they did have cotton on them so that they could use it as a fire starter if they needed a fire starter. I suggest to just bring fire starter or some other material like that. I think it would probably get you by a little better than your cotton underwear. Best fire starter that I've used and heard about was, well, I mean, yeah, like a stove or whatever. But if you're trying to light a fire in the winter, like having a plastic bag with Vaseline dipped cotton swabs was like a pretty inert material to just like have in a backpack. Doesn't smell like kerosene or something, and it has multiple uses. You can use it cosmetically for a number of things. Or goodness, if your lips chap, I hate it when it gets dry and cold, and you go, oh man, my pores can't handle it. They were in a different environment, 5,000 feet of difference in elevation a day ago. Too much change and too much seasonal change. And yeah, you get like, I don't know, just rough spots or dry spots or something. So you can use a Vaseline, you can use the cotton swabs for all sorts of different things. But they're fantastic. If you light that up, it's a great little flame ball, and you can use that with the stack of your other dry materials to get a fire going. Even in pretty wet conditions, especially if you're kind of keeping your fire starter material protected in some little part of your backpack, keeping it dry and stuff. That works out pretty well, and I think it works better than like your underwear on a rafting trip. But yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, people try to not use that. People try to like drop their leather belts. Like they won't take a leather belt out into the woods either. I like having like a sturdy belt. And like, well, you see like people with like big leather boots or whatever. It's not because it gets waterlogged, but I guess because it's maybe a weight thing. I think that's what the idea was. Maybe they're like going backpacking and use like a piece of nylon webbing as a belt at that time, or other stuff where like I don't know, just little tricks and things of like how you kind of hide certain materials and other materials and stuff. But I don't know, it's weird how it goes. So I guess cotton stuff is sort of no go. They talk about using wool a lot as sort of like a preferred material to make it out of, or down. I hear like down stuff is kind of a preferred material, and then I also kind of hear similarly cited bad things about sort of the petroleum developed products that you get from polyesters or nylons, or I guess like those polyester insulating foams that you get, like those thermoball insulating foam bits that would be in the pouches of another polyester material that makes up like the puffy jacket that I wear. For the Patagonia one, that's a down-filled puffy jacket. You have little goose feathers poking out of it all the time too. Yeah, if you like kind of you feel around the right way, a little goose feather will punch out the side, and you pull it out. Hey, poof, a little feather right there, a little down feather, which is kind of trippy, but those I guess are like a better insulating system than like the synthetic kind of oil-based stuff. And I guess the same goes for like sleeping bags too. If you want to get into like a sleeping bag to keep you warm, there's some like the 15-degree bags that are, well, I don't know. It has a couple other features too. Where I guess it's like light and it scrunches down well. And if you get it wet, you can get it dry again well. I guess it depends on like certain qualities of down. Sometimes that kind of I think is a little tricky. But the wool, I guess you can get wet. You'll stay warm, and you can get it dry faster. And I think that's sort of the benefit of the wool on the animal that gets wet too. You know, like if you think of a sheep getting rained on all the time, I guess it's sort of part of the fiber is that it doesn't attract a lot of odor because it has to be on an animal all the time. And I guess it does well to not have to like make you cold when it gets wet. I guess that's a big part of it. So a lot of the merino wool fabrics that have come out, or the merino wool blends that are with some little bit of spandex or some other kind of natural fiber product that they try and put in, helps it kind of be a little bit more durable when they have those little blends. But mostly you want like a pretty strong merino wool fabric. And that's pretty cool if you're getting sort of like a base layer or something like that that's a little bit more tuned for the outdoors. There's like wool sweaters or something that you can find, but that's not quite it. They're cool old wool shirts, like an old Pendleton shirt or an old Filson shirt that's like a logger's kind of wool button up that would go under like a canvas jacket. That kind of thing's cool, but that's sort of a different look. And it used to be the technical gear layering, and probably still what you'd see if you get like a horse guide, like a guided trip with a horse or a mule or something like that. That's to pack in a bunch of stuff. They probably still use gear that's sort of similar to that without the kind of like the technical synthetic gear that you try and find at like REI hiking places or something, or whatever else similarly branded. But yeah, it's cool. Trying to do some wool merino underlayers. Trying to work with those puffy jackets when I can. Trying to work with I have a soft shell that actually gets a lot less use than it used to. I used to try and use soft shells all the time, but really I just kind of go with the wool base layer, the North Face kind of warm, like warmer temperature rated puffy jacket, and then I have the Gortex layer over that. Picked up a hat this year. Hats are pretty cool. Liking that. Boots. I had a couple different sets of boots for the October stuff before it gets real heavy in the season, before it gets like real wet or rainy. And while I'm kind of doing some of this lighter outdoor stuff, I have like a pair of heavy leather boots that are super cool for some of the deeper hiking stuff that you get into, especially after it's real wet and rainy and stuff. But really for a lot of the light season stuff and sort of summer, spring stuff, I have these Nike SFB boots. It's like that military boot. I picked it up in brown, or like a desert tan color. And then I also picked up a similar pair that Under Armour makes. And so they're kind of like a lighter, more athletic shoe from the base, but they have like kind of a tall neck that goes up to like your mid upper ankle there. And so it's not like a real tall boot, or like it's not like galoshes. They're not waterproof. They're kind of vented on the sides, and they dry out. They're kind of like a synthetic material that dries out pretty quick when you do get it wet. But it also has like a good bit of tread, and you can get them wet, get them dry, get them wet. I think they're kind of made for an okay dry environment. That's sort of where I use them most of the time, is hiking around for any of this kind of lighter duty forest stuff. Is really nice because they're light boots. Like with those other heavy leather ones, like just the soles of the boots seem like they're a pound each. You kind of like feel it the first couple of days that you're getting back into the use of them during the season, where you're like, man, my feet are like 4 pounds heavier. It seems like each. You're just kind of like walking with a weight on it. So it's nice to have one of the newer sort of higher tech boots. They don't have the same kind of ankle support as like a thicker leather boot does, and they don't have the same kind of heel support. I like to talk about like those, thick, like a 2-inch heel or something that like one of those Whites boots has. Or if you get like Red Wings, they have like a real deep, thick heel on it that you can use to kind of stomp in and cut in on some hiking stuff. And for these, yeah, it's just kind of like a good sort of smooth walking boot, and you get some ankle support from that tall neck, but it's sort of a fabric so that it really seems like it's a light boot, and it seems like you're ready to run in it. You can do like an athletic maneuver in these pretty well, and it doesn't seem like the boot's going to be too heavy to slow you down. Not right for every circumstance. Like if I'm really going in a deeper area, it's cool. Really, it's nice to have like the kind of protection of a steel-toed leather boot. But like the normal SFBs, I think, are not a steel toe. I think these Under Armour ones though are, and I think there are steel toe versions that are out there. But that does seem to. I've kind of run into a few circumstances where for some of the more woodsy stuff, it really seems like having the steel toe has helped a lot to keep my feet protected and stuff. And if you're hiking a lot, you gotta watch out for blisters and stuff too. One of the big things I've noticed to help that is like really breaking in your shoes with 3 weeks or more, but 3 weeks of like pretty near full-time use to really start getting them broken in, or to get kind of the feel, the break, the crease, the kind of the fabric kind of working together in the way that it's going to fit around your body and stuff. But yeah, it seems like it takes about 3 weeks to sort of get those shoes broken into a spot that ends up being comfortable for longer trips and longer wear. I had like a pair of Chacos. Oh man, those Chacos, they were great. You don't wear socks with them. You don't like buffer it with wool socks or something. But I remember, I think, working with those for like 3 weeks or so. At first, your feet, man, they will rub raw. Yuck. But you'll get some hot spots with the webbing on those chacos. It's like this real kind of tough webbing, but after like 3 weeks or so, like after you kind of wear your foot into it so that it's kind of strong enough to deal with it, and you also start breaking in the rubber of the boot or the rubber of that foot or the shoe. It's your foot. But once you get that all kind of broken in, I was able to hike for miles in those and really have no rub problems at all. I think I did the whole hiking trip up to the summit of the Paintbrush Divide and the Cascade Canyon, you know, like that Tetons trip that I talk about sometimes. But yeah, I did that whole hiking trip of the Tetons in late September, probably right around now. But I did that trip in the Tetons with just those black chacos that I had like kind of that boot tread bottom, and I did great through that whole trip. I did like a 42-mile trip down the Lower Rogue. That was like a backpacking trip. So you have you pack on. You got these little river shoes on, and you're hiking away on the trail. And yeah, a lot of the times, if you're not really in shape for it, man, those will just rip your feet up pretty badly. And I've seen it really affect some people's trips before, you know, like where their shoes just like really start to bite in on them. And it happens really fast. Like as soon as you get like a hot spot or something, it can be just a quarter mile or another mile. And then like that problem has been exacerbated a lot. So as soon as like gets bad, boom, man, gets bad fast, or it starts to degrade fast. And then once it's gone, it's gone and for a while, you know, so it's bad. And it can cause some mobility problems when you're out there. So I think kind of dealing with some of that stuff or kind of breaking them in early and stuff is cool. Which is what I've been trying to do with some of my shoes. But yeah, trying to get outfitted for the stuff in October. It's been kind of fun. Trying to work out the layers and stuff. Picked up a fanny pack. I guess I didn't talk about bags and stuff. I should talk about that next time. But yeah, I picked up a little fanny pack. It's cool. It's sort of like a military styled one, or it's sort of like a desert tan, and has kind of a look, or I don't know, whatever, like the build. It's got like not bullet holes. It's got like little straps, like a cowboy belt would have to like put ammunition in. Like you have a couple bullets, a couple extra shells, slide them in to this little belt lining here. Nice. I don't know if I'll use those a ton, but I got this to kind of pair with the binocular harness I have, and then now that like on the left side, and then I have kind of a smaller camera bag sling that I take just the camera that so I have like the bigger gear bag in the truck or something, and then I'll have just the camera bag as a sling, like a small light one that I hike around with, and that one works really well. It's like a smaller Lowepro sling. It's probably what it's called. It's got a little coffee cup holder in the front of it, one bay to kind of hold stuff, but that goes around my side and stuff. That's got my camera in it. Then I've got this fanny pack with any of the other tools or fixings that I would have normally maybe had to put in a backpack or something. And that's been like a pretty good and kind of light mobile bit to move around with when I'm not trying to carry a bigger backpack or water bottle or something. And that's really nice to do when I'm already carrying the camera bag on the side. So the bino harness on the front, fanny pack on the side, jackets all around, pretty set up and ready to go for some fall stuff. So it's been kind of cool, and it's not been super exciting. It's just kind of like sitting next to the truck on a cold day, wearing a bunch of jackets, sort of waiting for it to get warmer, waiting for my or trying to get my jet boil going. Jet boils are fast, so you don't have to wait much, but trying to sit there next to my truck, next to my tripod, hoping that I get some okay pictures that are kind of like, where am I? It's sort of woodsy or something. You're like, well, I'll take a picture. I'm excited about it. It's been kind of cool. I've been over by some lake sites and stuff that are really cool. So you get some nice light, some nice kind of open views, open vistas with the lake and the water line and stuff. And so I really kind of appreciate that, getting out to Eastern Oregon, seeing some sunrises, some sunsets. That's really cool. Getting over to the ocean and stuff, getting up into the forests. So I'm trying to kind of keep it moving through October. And I don't know, it's been a good time so far. So got a couple new things that I'm going to be trying to work on. I'm trying to set up like a Twitch account. We'll kind of see how that goes. I know it's kind of primarily focused for live streaming, which isn't maybe exactly what I want to do with it, but I do want to have a Twitch account available that's sort of operating some kind of live stream related to the type of media stuff that I put together over the years. So I'm going to try and be building that out over the next couple of weeks, but you can try and check that out. I think it's twitch.com/Billy Newman. Maybe that's it. I don't know if there's a different URL to it, but the username on Twitch is Billy Newman. There should be a Billy Newman live stream going. That'll be a lot of the BillyNewmanPhoto.com content on there, sort of rebroadcast as a live stream. Hoping to kind of have that be a rolling tool that I use, which is kind of fun. So trying to get that up and running, and also similarly trying to do some video capture and like some screen capture tools. Trying to use those to make some videos around some of the photo editing work that I've done in the past. And so I can kind of like walk through a photo, and then we can kind of visualize the changes that were made to the photo, see it kind of before or after, or with different changes sort of applied to it. So we can kind of figure out like, well, like from this picture, like how do you kind of make it over here? And, or how do you just even like tune out some of the more distracting elements so you just get to the base image that you would have seen originally. You know, you see like, oh, it looks like that. But maybe if you push it this way, you get different effects to it. So trying to do some of that work, and it's really just kind of a slower sort of mellow look at some of the photo editing things that go on to really make an image different. I'm kind of trying to deconstruct it from being like a show, like remember watching cooking shows back in the day. You watch Emerald or something like that, and as soon as like the hard part comes up of like where they had to spend an hour doing preparatory work to get a meal ready, they just say like, oh, well, we're about to get it ready, and then they just kind of like slip it under the desk, and then right out of the oven they pull the freshly baked one that's like ready to go, TV perfect, the one of the 10 that they made that had the right type of browning over the top. It just like sort of the phony showness of it, of like, well, here it is, without any problems, here's the demonstration of how we get from point A to the very end. And so we'll kind of see if it goes that way. But for the most part, I'm just kind of trying to slowly walk through like, oh, well, like if we make this kind of change to one of the dynamics, and then we also throw in this change, then we get like this really strong effect that's too much. So if we back those down, then we get to kind of see where the balance is, or where those get a little bit more even, or so just kind of like walking through some of those things that I've learned over time, and that's kind of cool. But trying to put some of that up eventually on the Twitch account, on the YouTube account, and on other websites where video is served. I'm trying to make it available there. But I think video should be like a cool part, or like a bigger part of what I try and do, not to sell, but just other stuff that I produce through 2021, coming up on it soon. So yeah, you can check out some of that stuff, but go to BillyNewmanPhoto.com to get links to everything. You're going to find out more information there. Check out some of the recent blog posts I put up. I don't know, just some photo stuff that I've been up to. And you'll definitely see some changes on the site and stuff over the next few weeks. More podcasts to come. That's kind of cool. So trying to get out to do a little bit more stuff here in October before we start to probably tune it down a little bit after as the holidays start up. Probably after around my birthday or so, around like the 11th of November, 15th of November. We'll sort of tune it down a little bit for the holidays, which would be cool. But podcasts throughout, some stories throughout, some editing, some photos, some video stuff. That's probably why I'll work on that more. But maybe some of the deep woods stuff might tune down as the winter comes. So thanks a lot for listening to this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast. You can check out BillyNewmanPhoto.com/support to find out ways you can donate to this podcast and support the work that I've been doing to do photography stuff. You can also find out other ways to get a hold of some of the photographs if you're interested in making financial contributions that way. But definitely appreciate you guys checking out this podcast. Talk to you again next time. Bye.